The semiconductor manufacturing industry is undergoing a period of consolidation, with companies merging and acquiring each other to reduce costs and improve efficiency. One of the most significant trends in this consolidation is the integration of fabrication, assembly, and testing into one company, leading to a fast ecosystem. F for fabrication, AS for assembly, and T for testing. Traditionally, fast flow is owned and handled by separate companies. Fabs are responsible for manufacturing the semiconductor chips, while assembly and test companies are responsible for assembling and testing the chips before shipping them to the customers. However, the cost of building and operating a fab, assembly, and testing site has been increasing, and the demand for chips has been growing. It has made it difficult for small and medium-sized companies to compete in the fast market, mainly in assembly and testing. As a result, there has been a trend towards consolidation in the fast market. Large companies such as TSMC, Samsung, and Intel have acquired or invested in smaller fabs, assembly, and testing companies. This consolidation has allowed major companies to achieve economies of scale and improve their profitability. There are several benefits of fast ecosystem into one company. It allows companies to share resources and expertise across all the semiconductor manufacturing stages. It can lead to lower costs and faster time to market for new products while improving quality control. Companies can better ensure that the chips meet their specifications by having all of the manufacturing steps under one roof. Also, it can give companies more flexibility to respond to changes in the market. If there is a sudden increase/decrease in demand for a particular type of chip, the company can quickly manage the production accordingly. Of course, there are also some challenges associated with integrating fast. One challenge is that it requires a significant investment in capital equipment. Another challenge is that managing a complex manufacturing operation can take a lot of work. Despite the challenges, many companies believe the benefits of integration are substantial and worth pursuing. The fast ecosystem's integration and development will likely continue in the semiconductor manufacturing industry. As the cost of building and operating a fab increases and the demand for chips grows, smaller companies will find it increasingly difficult to compete. It will lead to further consolidation in the fast market, and the semiconductor manufacturing industry will see more and more companies integrating fast into one company.